So Jeff is the head of product marketing over at Calendly. I'm sure no one on this call has ever heard of Calendly, I'm sure. I'll let him describe what he does and sort of some of the things that they're up to over there. So with that, Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited. So Jeff Hardison, and at Calendly, we have both we're historically a product-led growth company. For many years, you could only buy with your credit card. And we added a sales team, probably in earnest we had some sales team members that were more sales assists, but about a year and a half ago, we started to really go up market, and we added an enterprise plan that you could only buy via sales. And so I joined about a year and a half ago then, because my passion is helping product-led growth companies go up market and add a sales team without losing kind of like that PLG essence. And I love to see, like, can you balance both the PLG self-serve motion and the sales-led one, and everybody get along? Because for me, a lot of this isn't just about the tools and whether the jobs to be done of PLG versus SLG. It's the kind of collaboration and the soft skills needed as a marketer, trying to get everybody to get along, from product managers to sales to CS to marketing.
Awesome. And with that, let's start, I guess, just at the top then, of the idea of adding a sales team to a product-led growth company. How do you think about doing that? How do we sort of introduce that idea and get others on board?
Yeah, I think well, the question that used to come up, this is the topic now, is PLG adding SLG. But the question that used to come up a couple of years ago was, how does SLG go to PLG, right? And is it right for you? And I think a lot of founders felt peer pressured to go PLG, and it wasn't necessarily always right for them. So for example, I used to work for a customer data platform where you have to bring on the data team, the marketing team, you have to bring on IT, all these different departments to bring together all these disparate applications, and then even think about, do we tap into Redshift or what have you? And it's a very collaborative selling process, and it's an expensive product. And maybe PLG isn't always right for that, right? Like Segment, it worked for them because they had established with the developers, and then they went from there. But if you're coming in, say like it's a consumer goods company like Procter & Gamble, maybe they don't use Segment. And so you need to make it a committee decision. And so for like a product like that, or say like Wi-Fi, adding Wi-Fi to enterprises, it doesn't always make sense to go PLG. But it might be something that's easier to adopt, like Calendly, where you can just sign for free and get started and start booking meetings in seconds. That is a business that's ripe for PLG, right? And so I think first you got to figure out whether PLG works for you, and then you start to go down that path. And then it's kind of a similar decision, but flipped on, should we add a sales team? And right now, for some reason, the thinking is that every PLG company should be adding a sales team at some point, and that you're naive if you're not adding a sales team. And I think it really depends, just like it depends on whether SLG should go PLG. And so for us, and I think a lot of other PLG companies that go up market, I worked at Envision, it was a similar situation. At some point, you start to ask yourself, are we hitting a ceiling on the freemium signups and people upgrading with their credit card with the personas we're going after? Or is there more business out there? We just haven't learned how to talk to them yet, right? And so for us at Calendly, if you think about it, unlike, say, a company that maybe only sells to like software designers and developers like Envision, we sell to everybody. My mother-in-law uses Calendly, yoga instructor. You've got, my doctor said that they were thinking about using it. You've got also sales teams using it, recruiting teams, product management teams, all people from all walks of life are using it. So arguably, the whole world could use Calendly. And so do we really need a sales team to go up market? And so it becomes this decision where it's like, can we still go and spread out horizontally throughout the world while also experimenting with going up market? And what we found was that there were certain departments that in companies that tended to not only buy, a couple seats, but they spread throughout the company, throughout the department. So this might be, for example, a sales team or recruiting team, obvious, because we've all seen Calendly links from these people. They tend to, get a little bit of adoption from a PLG perspective, bottoms up, and then it starts to spread. Well, that's a great opportunity for our sales team to come in and say, hey, VP of sales or sales ops or what have you, you have, 30 people that are using Calendly, some for free, some with their credit card, maybe they expensed it. Would you like to kind of, get everybody using it together, and let's talk about the advantages to that, right? And so that often takes a human element, as you all know, to go in and kind of be able to pitch that idea to somebody who maybe has never used Calendly. Maybe they have an assistant and they have no reason to use a Calendly, like the assistant books all the meetings. And so they didn't even know what really Calendly is. And so salespeople and CS people are really good at kind of telling that bigger story to not just the sales leader of that department, but also IT, purchasing, legal, et cetera. Now, that is, as you all know, that is not an easy thing to do, to kind of spin up that kind of motion in a PLG company. It takes certain thoughts around, is this right for our culture? Do we have the kind of people that want to do that? Will we all get along together, product management and SLG? And these are the kind of considerations I think every company needs to think about.
So tell me about there's a couple questions, and I think we'll get to some of these too. But talk about sort of what was the status when you're about to join the team at Calendly, sort of what was their setup today from just like a high level point of view on the deals that they sort of had in their pipeline. And then what were you're kind of coming in to help layer in sales to that process. So obviously there were some things that they were running into or opportunities that they saw to sort of bring you in and help bring it to the next level. So can you kind of describe that and then maybe some of the learnings along that path?
Sure. And I'm going to overgeneralize a bit because it was a little bit all over the place in terms of the deals and how sales was handling them. So I don't want to reduce what they were doing to this, but I would say that I noticed when I joined, we just had a few salespeople at the time. This is a year and a half ago. Now we have many more. We did not yet have an enterprise plan that you could only buy via salesperson. And so when I joined, you try the product out for free, go through a 14-day trial of our second most expensive plan, which is now called the Teams plan. And you got all those features, and you could buy that with your credit card, right? And you can still do that today. And so what the handful of salespeople did at the time was they provided that white glove treatment that salespeople are great at to help walk a prospect through which plan is right for me. So like, say me, I'm an early adopter that likes to do things DIY. I can go in and say, I'm going to read about the Teams plan. I'm going to read some help literature. I'm going to ask some friends. I'm going to choose the Teams plan and take my credit card. But others might say like, this is confusing. Is it the Teams plan? Is it the professional plan? I don't know. Let me talk to somebody, right? And some people just like to talk to somebody, as we all know. And the sales team at the time were more of a sales assist team, helping you make the decision which plan to buy. That said, there were large organizations as well at the time who said, hey, we need to sign a paper. We can't just like put our credit card in. That's not the culture of our company. We're a very large, Fortune 1000 company. We need to work with somebody, sales, CS, somebody to be able to kind of process that deal. And sales was also help for that. And I'd say the third category where there was just natural kind of enterprise sales personalities on the team who said, you know what? I'm talking to right now a VP of sales who wants help picking out a plan they could probably buy with their credit card. But what if I brought in their recruiting leader? And what if I brought in their marketing leader as well? And just see if I can expand this deal and go wall to wall, even though I don't feel a lot of pressure yet from my employer to do that.
Got it. Okay.
And then I think what happened after that, if it helps, is shortly after I joined, we launched our enterprise plan, which is the kind of the typical PLG plan of single sign-on, SCIM, security, administrative control that appeals not to just IT leaders, but also these VPs who want to wrap their arms around all this usage and have more control and so on and so forth. And that became the only plan that you had to talk to a salesperson about buying. And that really kind of catapulted us into this new land of, a PLG company going up market and needing sales and needing everybody to get along within the company to make it work.
A couple questions in the chat here. So let's start up at the top before getting too deep into PQL. So I think it's something we'll touch on. So Jocelyn, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I think you answered some of it, but I was just curious, what were some of the just clear tripping points in taking some of the customer-led or product-led started customers into a more sales-led motion, and just like any sort of things others can avoid. So certainly has come up paperwork and security reviews and stuff like that for me, but I was just curious if there are any other just obvious tripping points when somebody comes in expecting product-led and you introduce sales-led.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I would venture to guess that every company should wrestle with this every day, even if they've been doing this for 5 years, 1 year, what have you, is that really thinking through how are we treating those self-serve freemium signups? Are we engaging with them too early? Like, for example, I worked at another company where it was a PLG company that went up market. There would be like a target account logo would sign up for free. Say it was like VP of Asana. I'm just making this up. And the sales team would leapfrog over the PLG motion and just grab them and say, hey, you should really be on the enterprise plan, right? And so let's have a conversation about that. Now, some of us could make an argument that that's a great idea, right? Like it feeds the enterprise sales engine. They probably should be on the enterprise plan. But a PLG zealot on the other side would probably make the argument that like, let's just let it play out a little bit, like let's let them see what they do. Let's look at, the usage, let's see what features they use, what they don't, who they really are, et cetera, before we jump in. And so I think this is like a daily negotiation for us in terms of, are we doing this right? Are we being customer minded, right, in the way we do it, while also balancing our desire from a revenue perspective to go up market and go after some of those. And so, I'd say as part of that, it's really thinking thoughtfully about who should we be engaging with? Should it only be target accounts, for example, like 100 target accounts that the sales team has? Should we leave others alone, right, and let them go through the PLG motion? Should it be based on what time in the life cycle of their engagement with us should this happen? Should it be time-based? Should it be usage-based? Should it be like, hey, for example, with Calendly, a lot of companies will upgrade to our Teams plan, which is our second most expensive plan, if they want access to Salesforce or if they want a round robin feature. It's very feature gated in terms of how it happens. And so like you could just do easy PQLs all day around like, hey, this person engaged with Salesforce during the trial, reach out to them and like leapfrog the whole PLG motion around that. But one might say on the PLG zealot side, like maybe they were just playing around and like clicked on that page, right? Or they were just trying stuff out. So you really, I think, have to think thoughtfully about it. And I think that's where companies go wrong, is they try to operationalize this stuff like it's just a science, but it's just as much art, science, as well as just like human empathy, I think, to do it right. Hope that helps.
Yeah, running into all of those, I was just sort of curious. Because some people, that's how they want to be negotiated, and have even been playing with just sort of approaching other executives, be like, hey, this department's using it. Are you interested in learning about it? And varying degrees of success of all of them. I was just curious.
That's probably one of my favorite, is that when you already start to see enterprise buying behavior in one department, let's say it's the sales department. Let's say that we've like locked up sales department at a company. Everybody's using it. Everybody's on an enterprise plan. We're as high as we can go with that department. When we can go to another department and be like, hey, there's a cultural trend happening in your company of going all the way to the enterprise plan and sales. Do you want to do the same thing in recruiting? Because you got a few, freemium users over here. Because that's very empathetic to that company's culture, right? Because it's having that culture versus forcing that behavior on them when you might not know whether they want to lock everything down, because maybe their IT department's more lax about it.
When you don't even know what the sort of status of that department even is within that culture too, right? So I haven't tried it enough times to really feel like I have a pattern to it, but it's interesting. You have to make some assumptions about what people think of each other.
Yeah. And I think all of us who like to kind of scale things and operationalize them, we don't want to have to think that hard about every single account.
That my experience to date, my experience has been you have to.
You have to. And I think salespeople think that way. Salespeople don't go in and be like, I'm going to treat every single VP of sales the same. They do discovery. They study their LinkedIn profile, right? They like figure out what their hobbies are. They see some tweet, like this person seems grumpy versus this person seems very like positive. And then they tailor the conversation that way. And I think you kind of have to do that as well on the, PLG going up market side.
Did you want me to ask my question, Breezy?
Yeah, go for it, Elijah.
Okay, cool. Just to give a little context, I'm with Bonusly. We had free trials gated up to this point. So if the company size was under, I think it was like 100 users, they could do a free trial, but otherwise they were pushed to a demo with sales. So now if you want to do a free trial, you can have a free trial. We haven't changed the way that sales interacts with those users. They immediately call them and start to have conversation. So we're now starting to work on defining what a PQL is, and we're doing it as like a joint effort between marketing, sales, and product, mostly to just kind of get everyone to feel like they're part of the mix, we're not dictating. Any tips on, and we're using Amplitude to like hopefully get some usage behavior there, and patterns there. Any tips on like general, like what to do, what not to do in terms of defining the PQL and interacting with those different teams? I'm on the product team.
Yeah. So one of the first things I do, like if I'm talking to a friend reaches out, hey, we're thinking about this on LinkedIn, let's talk. I just want to pick your brain. I'll always, and I recommend all of us to do this with each other here, is go to their pricing page and try to figure out how this company makes business, makes revenue, and how they run their business. Because your pricing page will tell you everything, right? So it's like, is the company, like I would go to your pricing page and see that, okay, I can only do a trial. Maybe I can do a trial, but I have to talk to sales first to find out, or I have to sign up. Maybe it doesn't tell me that I have to have a certain amount of, seats before I can do it, right? Or it's kind of opaque, right? And kind of like learn about that and like think about it from a customer's perspective. And then are your plans gated by feature like ours are? Are they gated by usage, like certain amount of meetings?
Yeah.
Right? Is it gated by seats? Is it, so on and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
Because how you gate things and move people up the ladder of the plans is really going to define how you take action next. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I haven't studied your pricing page yet. You gave me a couple of indicators, but how do you currently gate your plans?
It's feature differentiated right now. Yeah, we're actually thinking about doing a whole repackaging pricing initiative, but we're at the very beginning stages of that.
Fun.
Yeah. We're thinking about going to freemium too.
Yeah. One of the things I do is, so like when I'm working for a smaller startup that's thinking about this and they don't have the money for a cool tool that will tell you all this and make your life so much easier, what I'll do is I'll just go into something like Amplitude, or I went into Retool, and I will literally like look at the view of every single, say we only have 100 accounts that are using this. I'll see how many seats they all have, who is like using certain features, who's the champion, who was the first user. And I will like go, and just so I can understand it visually, I will like take their faces off of LinkedIn and say like, this is Slack, and this was the first user, this was the champion, I think this was the economic buyer, these people are using these features, this is one's using these features, based on like which ones are gated, so that I can start to see patterns and trends before I engage a tool where I can like really scale this. And so particularly from a product perspective, I think that probably would help you. Is it just like, go look at that and see where's the trends. For example, maybe, all the target accounts that sales really cares about, like the top 10, that all use this one feature, right? And the feature's on one of your like least expensive plans. Well, that'll tell you something that like, they're not going to want to sell their most least expensive plans. They're going to sell the more expensive ones. And so like, that will help indicate where that feature should go when you do your pricing change, for example.
Yeah.
But also you'll just learn a lot about the behaviors. And so a lot of times what salespeople want to see is, what is that one feature that's being used, or two features or behaviors that correlate around, I was using correlate, that are associated with the more expensive plans that they like to sell.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing a max diff survey to like get the value attached to the features, so begin to understand that a little bit more holistically.
That's great.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
I don't want to oversell Tim, the CEO of Correlated, so I'll just say that what Jeff just described is kind of exactly what the fancy product that we provide helps with. So yeah, it's basically looking at, for those customers that like hit the outcomes that you want. Yeah, what are some of the associated behaviors that they have, or associated like dimensional characteristics? So you mentioned like economic buyer, like do they have certain titles? If it's a user-based signal, or a certain characteristic if it's account based. So that's the kind of thing that we see, our customers deploy, and to help kind of make these definitions in the first place, and then test and iterate on them and see kind of what's working. Because obviously products aren't static. You're constantly adding new features, you're maybe adding new product lines all together. And so you're constantly evolving, what these look like over time. So I'll stop there. There's a lot more I can say, but I'll stop there and let you guys go back to questions.
No, I think that's really helpful because like you can do that manually, but it's extremely time consuming, or you can leverage a tool, right? And then once that happens, you're like, okay, I get it now. I can do this at scale versus just doing this one account by one account.
Yeah. Probably gonna look into the tool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jeff, so what are some of the things that, from your time there so far that have come up, like, or in your previous role too, because I know this isn't sort of your first product-led experience. What are some of the things that sort of stand out to you as maybe mistakes that were made along the way, or maybe even you didn't have to make the mistake, but it was a learning? It's like, oh, I will always kind of repeat that behavior going forward. Any lessons you can share there?
So I know this is oversimplifying it, but I like to oversimplify things. I think a lot of PLG companies have a funnel when they're starting, and it's like, okay, people visit the site, then they activate, then they upgrade their credit card, maybe they renew. And then you've got the sales led side. It's like they hit some type of wall, right? And they want to talk to sales. They then talk to sales. Maybe they, upgrade, not with a credit card, then CS renews them, right? And so there's kind of these two funnels that are happening. And I think a lot of times what PLG companies will do is there'll be people in the company that understand one funnel, and that's like sales led people understand that one. They think that's the best funnel, right? And then you get like the PLG people like, no, this is the funnel. And it becomes a religious debate about which funnel is more important. And really, the more you kind of think about this, these funnels kind of like layer over top each other, and people go in and out of other funnels. Like it's like almost like being on a street going down a road, or the PLG road. They'll like turn on the grid over here and try to get over into this traffic lane over here. And that's the SLG one. Then they'll go back, right? And so that's the real like buyer behavior that goes on. And I think that the main problem in all PLG companies going up market is that they don't try to have empathy for each other. Product management is annoyed that there's these new salespeople around asking for certain features for just like some large deal, right? And then they'll also maybe just like jettison some feature because only 5% of the company was using it, but it happened to be Microsoft and Slack and a bunch of big companies. Sales, on the other hand, comes in and just starts being like, hey, I talked to this last company and like, they really want this feature. And like, that's not how you do it, PLG people. You have to like group it together and propose it. And so like the two not trying to understand each other and valuing each other equally is what brings down, I'd say, almost all PLG companies trying to go up market. And like worrying about that on a daily basis, how do we all see eye to eye and learn from each other, I think is key. So like the fact that we have a product person here thinking through like, how do we do this with sales? That is like an indicator to me that like Bonusly is on the right track, because a product person cares about this topic. Whereas some product people are like, don't bother me with that stuff. Let sales ops handle it or what have you. Right.
Awesome. I wish we had time. I see a question with Debbie here and Tim chiming in a little bit. So maybe we can, I don't know, in a Slack Connect channel or over LinkedIn or something, but make sure that we can help each other out. Yeah, next session. Perfect. Maybe Jeff will continue to join us going forward. It'd be awesome. But yeah, Jeff, thanks so much. I really appreciate your insights. I know we're ending abruptly, the classic 30-minute mark, but really, really helpful stuff here. And I think a lot of good questions and value added. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.